Can someone just let me know what would be cause for an immediate arrest when it comes to lying to police about your whereabouts and a timeline? So, not just talking, there's a little bit of things that don't fit. If Lauren Scharf's explosive news is going to be that Barry signed into the hotel, maybe in person, on Saturday night, what does that really mean? Because the police would have arrested him if he had told them 5 a.m. but was checking in person to the hotel. So, we've got one source for some of this information that makes it seem like Barry's lying about a lot of things. But, if the news is that he checked in on Saturday night at a certain time, or maybe only mid-morning on a Sunday, neither of those things point to anything. If you've gone to the work site before checking in Australia and New Zealand, check-in, it's none of this 3 p.m. bullshit. It's something like 10 or 11 in the morning. And it depends on the hotel and how busy they are. You can often check in at all sorts of times, night and day. And it's usually after 10 a.m. actually, or 11 a.m., sometimes in the afternoon. So it all depends when the maid surfaces and how the hotel operates. So I'm wondering if the explosive news that Lauren Scharf is going to release is the check-in time, Barry actually on camera, not doing an online check like we so often do when we go and hop on a plane, or, you can do online check-ins for many things now, hotels and airports, flights. So, whatever time, to me, whether it's evening, morning, and whatever time, the questions it still leaves are, who was operating the Bobcat, if anybody, and because that hasn't been confirmed, I do not believe, to us by law enforcement what night the elder neighbour of the Slider address heard that Bobcat. We're assuming it's Saturday night. And if it's Saturday night, who was driving it, or who was operating the machinery? Was it Morgan, Cassidy, Barry? Was it on the way to Denver that night? We don't know. We've got one source for this 5 a.m. thing. I mean, law enforcement haven't told us that, and nor has Barry. So I don't necessarily know what that means, because I feel like it would mean an instant arrest if that sort of thing was disparate, because let's remember 4 months ago, law enforcement know this about the timeline. Whatever Lauren's going to tell us, law enforcement, I'm 100% convinced law enforcement know whatever Lauren's going to tell us. So I know that Barry is obviously a person of interest. I don't know what it would take for him to be totally cleared. I mean, I think it would be something that points to another person, or a method, or something. Obviously he hasn't been cleared, but he hasn't been arrested either. So, what are we all missing? I've always thought if Barry done it, I know that's not good grammar, but I'm using the who done it language. If Barry done it, I've always thought, yeah, it was definitely not Sunday, and it might have been quite premeditated. I feel if it was a rage event on Saturday, he still had time to, do something with her. I feel like he sort of went off the mountain somewhere, or away into the mountains somewhere. And if it's on Sunday morning, I feel like then this is an abduction by someone else. But I 100% am convinced that Barry knows something. I 100% think that Barry should be going to the police, either to confess or just say what he knows. Who knows? He may have said what he knows. I think it's complicated. I think it's more complicated than roid rage and, yeah, I just really do. no matter whom is involved, whether it's Barry himself, a group, or someone completely removed. I feel like Barry's got an inkling. But anyway, I just thought there is no way that anything Lauren Scharf is going to tell you points any more for law enforcement to his guilt or innocence than what they already think. So he would be already arrested, okay? And it just means that somewhere we are labouring with our little minds under the wrong knowledge, or under presuppositions that are wrong, under assumptions that are wrong. We just don't know the full picture. And yeah, it doesn't look good for Barry, because he was at first casting aspersions on law enforcement. Now, he could truly be really pissed off. I mean, they might really have dropped the ball here. But, you know, that never looks good, because you need to support the people who are trying to find your missing wife. And there were strange breaks in conversation that was recorded on the mountain that time, you know, with regards to the bike. So that was strange. And the pleading. I mean, at first, you know, I thought, oh gosh, there is a man that is just so naive. This guy could fall for anything. You know, I thought, look, he probably knows it's being recorded, but I mean, he seems like a bit of a doofus type of thing, and like would be manipulated easily, or just doesn't really get things. I don't know. Because he seemed so sort of naive and trusting, and just too trusting, and, you know, it was a bit weird. But at the same time, obviously, last person to see someone alive, except for an abductor if it wasn't him. And, you know, there's things that don't add up, but the things that aren't adding up, we have to observe Barry directly. And it doesn't look good that he hasn't been searching and things, but because maybe he knows what, you know, it is all very, very queer. And it's not untrue that law enforcement play games. He's completely correct that they can lie, that they will do whatever it takes. And this way of approaching things is often problematic. But, you know, obviously confessions are ideal. You know, why are they relying on a confession in this case? If they've got so many people who could talk about Barry and the situation, they've got so much evidence, surely, from all the sites, and they've got technological evidence, surely. I mean, this is very queer. I mean, he's a genius. Obviously, he's a genius, and how he's taken this out. You know, well, he's involved with some pretty bad juju. I kind of think, you know, he's involved in some very bad juju. I don't know. I hope not. You know, does someone that's taking, you know, steroids, would you take steroids for yourself and that's acceptable, but you don't want your wife to ease her pain with medical marijuana? I mean, that does lead to addiction. It helps, but it does lead to addiction as well, because it still does have some THC in it, even though it might be 0.3%. I'm going to do some research on that, because a lot of people do keep using the drug. It's like with OxyContin, and you see it a lot. Now, the efficacy is if you use it for 3 to 5 days total, at first with a back injury. But what happens is people don't do the exercise, they don't move, they don't stretch, they don't punch through, they don't use the OxyContin, oxycodone, whatever you want to call it, in the right manner. They get heavily addicted, they up the amounts, up it, because let's face, they feel good when they use it at first and it does ease the pain. But before they know it, they've got this huge pill popping addiction. Nothing works and they end up having surgery. And this is, they just go down a slippery slope because the drugs are available, given to them, and they don't try the actual method that's proven. The best results come from 3 to 5 days of taking this heavy pain medication and then stopping. And a lot of the time that's not what happens. And it is the same with medical marijuana, and you've got a lot of people hooked. That's, it's big business for a reason, because you can get your own private license for it to have it, and you can also get it because of a medical condition and then have an ongoing lifetime addiction. So you've got consumers from lots of angles, and you can protect yourself. It's not good suffering is not good, but if you're going to get better, there are better things than taking medical marijuana. Sometimes it doesn't work for everyone. Fasting during chemotherapy, fasting and allowing the body's autophagy to work is efficacious and proven. People go to clinics in Russia for such a treatment and it works, and it's proven. It's evidential. And I think I would protect a loved one. I would need to know what sort of ongoing pain they were going to be in. I think if it's something that you can overcome, like cancer, I think in the long term you better not to risk any sort of addiction. If you haven't had an addiction, you might not understand this. And is someone that is so anti-medical marijuana, are they likely to take steroids? I guess so. I guess they could. I know Barry was quite slim at some point, and he was looking pretty fit and slim. It could have been because he was just in a good pocket of his life. Men often, if they have looked after themselves and they've got a good history, a good genetic history and a good sporting history. Like, for example, for me, I've got great genes and I've got a physical history of sport achievement, and it gives me something good standing for all of my life. Same with the basic food and just the good basic upbringing that I had, because that has given me a good physical body that I can pull back into line very easily. And I struggle with a lot of things physically, mentally, emotionally, and it affects my body. And I do have physical issues, but maybe like Barry, he wouldn't take much for someone like Barry to keep in shape and that sort of thing. So if he's eating well and working out and just working, there's not a lot of stress in his life, he's going to be looking pretty good through his 40s. And when your loved wife is ill, dying of cancer, getting cancer, and it's a battle of a life, there's things that might go out the window and you do start struggling. It's very easy to beef up, bulk up. And if you've already got a big frame, I know with how my body bulks up and how I put on weight, it actually goes on similar to how Barry's would maybe. If I got really big, the gut, the heaviness, the bigger upper body, my arms, it would happen, because even with 10 kilos, which I've put on before, which is a lot for me, that's how my athletic body shape goes, and it can depend on your body type and different bone structures and flesh types and the way flesh falls. They put on weight in different ways, and this is very true for men and women. And we're not talking, it's not really about pear shape, square shape, apple shape, although that has a little to do with it. It's more about the bones, and the Kebby system or body geometry systems are closest to explaining this perfectly, because different types have different ways that they put on weight and wear, whether it's around the gut, all over, just around the bottom and the thighs, etc. And it's true for men and women. And depending on how you're coping with stress, what food you're eating, you can bulk up in that way, and the heaviness just goes on. And sure, steroids will do things like that too. But if you're working out and taking steroids and eating well, you're going to be cut. You're not going to be sort of big and bulky and sort of heavy and maybe big in the gut. That can be from foods, that can be from eating too many carbohydrates and just eating at the wrong times, not getting enough sleep, being on the go. And I don't know if Barry Morphew drinks alcohol. You can see there's types of, people that drink alcohol that, they have those sort of weedy bodies, funny skin, they get rosacea, and all their calories goes into running their body because they're getting calories from the sugar of the alcohol, and they usually have candida. They have a pot belly, it's bloated, and the sugar from the wine or the whatever the beer or whatever their booze is, it turns into the fat, which is a layer around their organs in their gut. And so that pot belly where you're actually not getting nutrients, your body is only getting glucose to run on, and you're not getting nutrients and you don't have the right balance of microbiome. You've probably got SIBO, S-I-B-O, with not the right amount of bacteria in your upper intestines, and it causes a different type of outward expression of health in your body. And yes, you can also be quite bulky and get that big tight tummy and flab and things like that. So I don't know. And big muscly people that have had muscle and a bigger frame look big when they put on weight, unless they're extremely cut. So they're leaning up, so they're all protein and high fat, and they're not processing calories through the glucose. They're not storing that fat layer. So, there's a lot of different things besides steroids, and then we don't know. Yeah, it might be. I have discussed this a little bit as well, a little bit of, is this domestic violence or abuse, and that's that, the wild at heart, sweetie, and things like that. And I've discussed a friend of mine who married, and she couldn't sit in her house with more than one light on, sort of thing, if he came home and found that, and it was very controlling. But she at first thought she wanted to marry into a traditional relationship and have a marriage where the man is the man and she is the traditional wife, and he's making the main decisions. And there's nothing wrong with traditional roles either, masculine and feminine, but often we're isolated into these smaller groups, I guess, and it can leave us very alone in family groups. I think, just thinking about it, the expression, it takes a village to raise a family, and people do grow up and move away, and you don't stay in your hometowns and all live together, or in compounds like they might in in Guatemala or wherever, where people build new homes and areas, and you live in your village, and the children aren't just always one person's responsibility, and things aren't always just one person's responsibility. Our modern life puts a lot of pressure on everybody to be perfect, to be the provider, to be the nurturer, and unfortunately also diverts other things outside of the family home, outside of the nuclear home. Things like, giving your children values and teaching your children self-esteem and how they feel and think about the world. So sometimes these things are farmed out and other things are weighing on families. And, all the attention and the priorities are not in the right place. Now, we don't know. Did Barry Morphew want to protect Suzanne with every fibre of his being? Or did he control Suzanne Morphew with every fibre of his being? We desperately want the answer to this question. I'm thinking if what Lauren Scharf is going to announce that is so explosive, and that just sounds like some sort of diarrhea, wouldn't law enforcement have arrested Barry? I'm not sure. I just would like that explained, because I feel like if this is a big lie, if this is the timeline that was questioned, and it wasn't just about the bobcat, but it was about where he went when, with regards to the hotel, or what he has told a friend, or what he told law enforcement, wouldn't it be enough for an arrest right now, you know? I hope Barry confesses. I truly do, because I think it's a powder keg. It's dangerous. I don't judge him for a minute moving out of Maysville. Holy shit, wouldn't you? And he's been put between a rock and a hard place, because he can't leave his daughter alone to go and search. She's not safe around everybody. He wants to protect her. Do I think it's queer that for 3 months, 4 months, he hasn't made big announcements about searches and things? Well, I don't know. Were banners up all through her home state about Suzanne being missing all this time as well? I'm not sure about that either. And keeping quiet for 3 months, I'm not sure about that either. None of this sits well with me, right? The single source for a lot of information, everybody being quiet. You know, Barry, is he quiet because he's messed up into some sort of crazy juju and he does know something? Has he told this to the police? Is he not cleared because he does have some part, or he knows something? I don't know. It's my cat. Look, sorry, this has turned into a huge rant. A huge rant. I don't know. He is in danger, okay? He is in danger. If Barry Morphew is innocent, he is in danger, and he is in a very difficult position with all that pressure saying, you know, and the goading saying, you're going to be joining the search, Barry. You're going to get your daughter out there amongst us. She's not safe. And that is just goading. That is just cruel and rude and actually mentally unbalanced to say things like that. And yes, I don't know. I think Barry Morphew would love to join the search. I can't be sure. But what if he really wants to join that search and he just can't because he feels like his daughter is not safe with him? I don't know. I wish law enforcement had made another announcement and a stronger announcement. Maybe they're going to talk to Lauren Scharf. Maybe this is her explosive news. You know, isn't it funny? I'm not available. He's out of the office. He'll ring you back. I mean, that's typical run round, isn't it? How funny. But maybe he is talking to Lauren Scharf. Maybe, is it Captain Speasy? Maybe he is talking to her. And there's, but they didn't really say much, did they? It seemed like they really were not supportive of this search. And why? It's not because they wouldn't want to give their resources. I don't know. So I guess all will be revealed, unfortunately. It seems in a Pulp Fiction tabloid manner, if there was something important and that everyone should know, you just come out and say it, don't you? Do you like being manipulated? Do you like this drip feed? Do you think it's healthy? But, certainly certain people are basically coming out and saying, go and stick a pitchfork up Barry Morphew's ass, find him and harass his daughter. They're basically saying he's guilty. And yes, of course, Barry Morphew may be guilty. And it's created this very dangerous climate, I think, and I think he should just confess if he is, or at least go and talk to law enforcement even more openly if he does know something. But have you considered that he's not arrested because they don't know anything? or they don't have anything on him. Maybe they haven't looked hard enough at the right people at the right time. And so, did you consider Suzanne Morphew being alive for a few days after she disappeared? Was 4 days long enough? If you needed to go back for work, would you not return straight away? I know you think I'll leave the reins with Barry, but you'd be able to be there watching him if you had any suspicion whatsoever. Did you know John Smith is a friend of the family? He mentored one of Suzanne's nephews. He mentored them. That's been released now because the information was probably going to come out. It's better coming from him. So this is the guy with political aspirations who had trouble with Barry at the time that Suzanne was probably sick with cancer again, and he was probably under a lot of stress. I don't know. We'd need to know what he's like prior to that, maybe. He looked like he was a pretty happy guy. I don't know. Has he always had these dealings? Did he just fall in with the wrong crowd in Salida because he's vulnerable, because he's a bit of a doofus? Because, I don't know. It is very suspect. I understand that. That he may have had ties with certain people in Salida for a long time, for longer than 3 years. So that's quite terrifying in some respects, isn't it? I know what you all think. I wish you could really understand where my heart is about this and why I discuss it the way I do. It's not that I'm unable to see what things look like from many, many angles, okay? If you think that, I think you really don't understand me or my channel. I don't think you're actually listening to my videos, whether they're 6 minutes, 3 minutes, or long like this one, 27 minutes and 9 seconds and counting. You're not really understanding why I'm saying these things, and it is getting a bit too emotional for me, even though I'm very passionate about what happened to Suzanne. I do really feel very close to her. I mean, you can't pick out some people over others. I wish more people were paying attention to the Native American missing in America, and I would like more time spent on a lot of cold cases, especially missing children. And that, I'm very passionate about that. William Tyrrell, for example, in Australia, there's millions around the world. Human trafficking, sex trafficking, child trafficking. But, Suzanne really strikes a chord with me. She just did from the beginning. And when certain videos were made at a certain time, that really just finally it dragged me in hook, line, and sinker. And the focus is Suzanne. Suzanne Morphew is the victim. If this is, excuse me, if Suzanne Morphew isn't Gone Girl, which might mean that she's been a long-term victim of abuse, if foul play has come to her, Suzanne Morphew's the victim here. Other people are suffering. It's vicarious trauma. It's trauma. People have suffered the trauma of her missing, of the not knowing. Suzanne Morphew is the victim here. I am not victimizing anybody. I'm not trying to victimize anybody. I am reminding you to look at what you're being told and by whom and make your judgments on that. And it doesn't mean that Barry Morphew is not guilty. It doesn't mean that I can't see that he might not be guilty. Okay? Sorry about the big rave. Listen at 2.0 as I always say at the end, and I'll speak to you later.